Dr. Stein, he's going to provide us some great insight into his passion, some of the struggles in research, and I appreciate that he is willing to face that and discuss it tonight, as well as the successes. He is navigating barriers to equitable access to precision medicine and advanced lung cancer. So Dr. Stein, please come up. Thank you.
That was great. And now I don't have to check ESPN to see what the games are this weekend. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey as an LCI research fellow, and we've got some life lessons, some liquid biopsies. Hopefully there's something for everyone. I'm an assistant professor at UNC in the Division of Oncology, and this was my study, the EQUIP study on equity and precision medicine for lung cancer. I don't have any disclosures, although I did use, I've never done this before, I used ChatGPT to make some images, so I will tell you where those are. This is a real photo. And Jenny told me to keep it under an hour, and so I think we'll stick to that. I'll talk briefly about my background and how I got connected with the LCI, which I'm really grateful for. I will talk some about the challenges of conducting research, especially in the current era, some key findings from our study, and just a few summary comments. So a little bit about me, you've heard some. I'm a Durham native. I grew up with physician parents in the VA system, and I say that just to say I grew up in a culture of service, and I think that's really important, and that's really important to LCI as well, and informs a lot of my research interests. You can see some of my stops along the way. I would be remiss to not mention that I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 adorable children. I'd be happy to show you pictures. I'm a musician and a basketball fan, but I won't actually tell you which way I lean, because either way, I'm going to alienate half the room. But these are my career interests. I'm really drawn to improving care for underserved populations. And again, I think that comes from my family and my background. So how do we improve equity of the highest quality cancer care? We all know the huge population burden that lung cancer poses, and we know that there are gaps in care for numerous populations, including folks of color in rural areas without insurance and a variety of other factors. And precision medicine we'll talk about on the next slide, but we know that's really critical to improve outcomes in lung cancer care. And so the question with all of these is, how do we make progress? Okay, here's our first AI generated image. On the left, so this is sort of what I'm interested in. How do we take the precision medicine, the genome, the cells, what's going on at a cellular level in cancer, and merge that with what's happening out in society, where we know not everybody has the same opportunities, and also people face different barriers. I thought it did an okay job. So precision medicine, I think everyone here is familiar with, but it's this concept of genetic sequencing of tumors so that we can really understand the biology and tailor the treatment, more than just chemotherapy, but using things like immunotherapy and targeted therapies. And generally that's sent off tumor tissue, but we can also, as I alluded to in the title, draw blood and do what's called a liquid biopsy to look for those same mutations. So my question is, how do we merge this gap? How do we understand how to bring precision medicine to everybody who needs it, including underserved populations? And I'm at the table with a patient navigator. I believe patient navigation is really a promising strategy to do this. So I heard about how wonderful LCI is from UNC faculty, from my wonderful mentor, Marjorie Charlot, and I applied and was fortunate enough to receive this grant. And my study was to do surveys and interviews with patient navigators, medical oncologists, and pathologists to understand what the barriers are. And so I was like really excited. I was a fellow. This was my very first grant. I was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But I don't know if you guys heard about COVID. So that really made it hard to do this research. People were surveyed out. People did not want to click on another link or participate in an interview, and I totally understand that. But it became very challenging to do the work. Again, here's my second, AI-generated image. trying to find some greenery, some hope in this landscape that felt a little bit barren. And so the first lesson was that I sought partnership. I looked around me and looked for folks that could help and support this effort. And so I was fortunate enough to connect with folks at the North Carolina Oncology Navigator Association and the North Carolina Medical Association. UNC has a big network of affiliate sites. I reached out to my colleagues and mentors, Dr. Charlot, Tammy Allred. Tama Hargraves was a big supporter of this work, and I'm infinitely grateful to her, a beloved advocate. And we stuck with it. We completed 56 surveys from a range of folks. We completed some interviews. These were not the numbers we were hoping for, and so we had to scale back a little bit on our analytic plans, but we were able to present this work at ASCO last year. We have a manuscript that I'm very excited about that's currently under review, and I think contributed some important findings. So just briefly, I want to share some of these findings. What we saw was significant gaps in the delivery of precision medicine. And this was specific for folks with advanced lung cancer. And so when we see that 19% of clinicians are saying that they never order NGS, that should be 0%. That is a huge gap. And over half are never ordering liquid biopsy. And we'll talk about barriers in a moment, but actually I think this is a big gap as well. We saw that there were knowledge gaps for clinicians not feeling knowledgeable about next generation sequencing, liquid biopsy, or the targeted therapies that we all know are so important. And when I mentioned navigators as an important strategy for improvement, what we saw is that navigators are actively involved in these conversations, but didn't necessarily feel comfortable or informed to have the depth of discussions that they were having. And specifically, one of the things navigators do so well is identify barriers and resolve them. And they had limited confidence in our sample in resolving those barriers. And so I think that's a huge opportunity to improve care, is to equip navigators with more education and training to handle these conversations about precision medicine. We only had a few interviews, and I'm not going to read all of these quotes to you, but it's one of the reasons I love qualitative research. We were talking at our table about the importance of stories, and I think some of these quotes really give a lot of richness to our findings. We were talking about underserved populations, and one of our navigators commented that some of our patients of color are still thinking about Tuskegee, worried about being experimented on. I think that's so important when we're communicating with patients, to acknowledge some of the historical traumas and things that have happened, but also engage in a process of, hey, this is something that could really help you. The second one's a little longer, but this navigator was talking about social determinants of health and barriers to treatment. And she said, I don't care if you're a state senator or you're homeless, I'm going to ask you the same questions. Do you have enough money for food? Do you have enough money for your medications? Do you feel safe at home? We can't always look at somebody and see what barriers they're facing at home. So I think that's really critical. And the last is one of my favorite quotes. It's the reason I'm a navigator. It's the lighthouse in the storm. The storm is the cancer, and I'm directing the ships through. So to me, these quotes, along with the survey findings, illustrate that I think there is this opportunity to support navigators better to facilitate these conversations and get folks the care they need. I won't read all of these. This will be in the manuscript, but we were, even with just a handful of folks, when you talk to people that are doing this work, they see the barriers, and they also have pretty good ideas about how to improve things. And so if you don't get enough tissue for molecular testing, there's ways to work with our pulmonology colleagues, of course, to prioritize molecular testing, to use liquid biopsy. And I'll skip down to the last one. A number of folks commented on the lack of awareness, and I think that's one of the places where LCI is so important, to highlight that awareness of things like precision medicine to improve outcomes. So I just really, my conclusion is my gratitude to LCI for giving me this opportunity. I learned a ton. This was, like I say, the very first grant I ever got. Now I'm a faculty member and I'm submitting an NCI grant next week. I mean, this was a huge opportunity for me, and I learned so much. And I think that we also had some important research findings that have the potential to really improve outcomes for patients with lung cancer. So I want to thank some of the mentors that have been important to me, Marjorie Charlot and Sam Sykert, many of the folks that have funded me, and also, and to the patients really who motivate all of this work. So thank you so much.